first and foremost, can you talk to us about what you think infrastructure should encapsulate for you?
What we have traditionally focused on in infrastructure is roads, bridges, ports, airports, waterways, water systems. We have even included broadband in infrastructure, but never have we seen the litany of things that are now being discussed as being infrastructure. Bernie Sanders even said today that humans are infrastructure. So they're trying to put in place a spending bill that already they're saying is above $2 trillion, maybe as high as $2.7 trillion. That's an awful lot of debt, Caroline. And what we think we should do is focus on those roads and bridges and ports and airports and waterways and broadband. And the last infrastructure bill that we worked toward last year, and of course the House did not agree with the Senate on this bill, but it was about $325 billion. That is more along the line of what we have spent. And quite honestly, in Tennessee, where I am from, what we hear from people every single day is we want our roadways fixed. We want it to be safe to get to work, to get children to school. We want to make certain that we have the ability for commerce to take place over our highways and our interstate highways. We want our ports to be dredged and to be safe for products that are coming in.
But debt is cheap at the moment, Senator, and indeed, perhaps you can have even more commerce if people are freed up from having to care for loved ones and are able to get into the workforce to be more productive. Is there not a better compromise, a slightly higher price tag? And what do you think can really be achieved on a bipartisan nature, do you think?
You know, Caroline, one of the concerns in this bill is there is more money that is going to go into electric cars than there is into roads and bridges and highways. And are we concerned about elder care? Elder care is something I do every single day with elderly relatives. But are you concerned with that? Absolutely. But an infrastructure bill is not the place to have that discussion. And it is not the place for that type of funding. We have other funding avenues that come through other departments, and it really is inappropriate to say that that is infrastructure, is the kitchen sink infrastructure, because they're definitely putting everything but the kitchen sink in this and calling it infrastructure. Is Ben & Jerry's ice cream infrastructure because it's made by humans? So these are the questions that people need to ask as they look at this. Look, we know that this bill is really a boondoggle bill. There is a way to appropriately address infrastructure, and indeed, I have had a bill, zero money, zero lies, very easy to help get infrastructure projects in the ground and moving. And that is to deal with some of the regulation and the mandates that many times prohibit our smaller communities and our rural counties from being able to repair those roads and bridges.
Talk to us about where you really have made bipartisan strides, and particularly to our audience. We are on Bloomberg Technology, of course, and you've been looking in particular at China within a supply chain. You've been looking at big tech and the power that it has within the United States, and where you think that there might be some competitive issues that you want to see tackled. Where do you see your priorities being met there in a bipartisan nature?
Yes, and Caroline, you're right. And I've talked with Bloomberg many times about the bipartisan leadership that I've brought to bear in these issues dealing with China. We're very concerned about the aggressive attitude of the Chinese Communist Party and how they are seeking global domination by the time we get to the midpoint of the century. And we are pushing back, and we're pleased our allies are pushing back on the Chinese Communist Party and Beijing when it comes to Huawei, when it comes to 5G advancement and utilizing their technology, when it comes to what they're doing in the Xinjiang province with the Uyghurs and the genocide that's being carried out there, the aggressions against the Hong Kong freedom fighters, the Tibetans, Mongolians, and of course what they're doing to Taiwan. We're concerned about all of that with China. Indeed, when it comes to big tech, we're continuing to work there. Facebook, of course, I know there are situations with how they've shared information with some governments, how we have other governments like the UK and the US have been successful in more successful in dealing with Facebook, but their lack of attention to privacy of their online users is something that we are focusing on right now. We are looking at our federal trade.
Do you want changes in antitrust
and we're
law, Senator?
Yeah, and we're reviewing how antitrust, and there's bipartisan agreement there also, just like with privacy, the need for Section 230 reforms, which is something that we're discussing here. Looking at antitrust, I kind of look at this as the virtual you protection agenda. And it's looking at those issues of privacy, of data security, of antitrust, of looking at how big tech works in the marketplace and how they have been manipulating governmental entities, not only in the U.S., but around the globe.